Hello, hello, and welcome back. My name is Matthew. I'm the C# artisan, and this is the 8th video in my series on Azure Service Bus. Up till now, we've been receiving messages using a class called the Service Bus Receiver, which makes sense, the receiver for receiving messages. But if you start searching this up on the internet, and you look at some of the Microsoft Learning Paths and other maybe examples suggested by AI chatbots, you're going to see code that uses a different class called the Service Bus Processor. So what's that? What is this Service Bus Processor all about? It's actually pretty nifty, something you should know about and may want to use. So in this video, we're going to unpack the Service Bus Processor. When we were using the Service Bus Receiver, we started with a Service Bus client, and we're going to do the same thing for Service Bus Processor. So when we create our Service Bus Processor, it really looks just the same. We do client.createProcessor. We give it the queue name, and we're also going to want to give it some options. And these options turn out to be really important. So I'm going to create them separately. And for now, we're just going to accept the default options. And there we have a processor created. We'll be coming back to those options in a little bit. So the next thing we need to do is wire up some event handlers. So we're going to say processor.processMessageAsync. And this is our message handler. And the other one we need is processor.processErrorAsync. And this is our error handler. And I'd like to put the message handler first. So this is the event that's going to fire when our processor receives a message. And this is the event that's going to fire if there's an unhandled exception while processing a message. So for our processor, let's just do this. We'll say console.writeLine arg.message. Now, the message here is a Service Bus message received object, just like we've been dealing with. So we can say body.toString. So we received it, and then we have to return a completed task. And for the exception handler, we'll go back and test this in a sec, but let's just do console.writeLine arg.exception.message. That should be sufficient, and we can return a completed task. So we've created a processor with some set of options. We've wired up a couple of event handlers, and then we can kick it off. So we can say processor.startProcessingAsync. And now we're listening. I'm going to say console.readLine so that our app doesn't exit. And then after we press enter in our app, we can say processor.stopProcessing. And we can say no longer waiting for messages. And we'll put another console.readLine there. Again, I think you can see the flow. We're going to create the processor, wire up our event handlers, and kick it off. And then just wait. And then eventually, when we're done, we can tell it to stop. So let's run this. And my console is going to pop up. There it is. And now we are simply waiting for messages. So we need to send some messages. And I'm going to use my handy dandy magic message sender. So we've got a sender and a receiver. So let's go over here and do just one. We'll send a single message, And there it is. Ding, we sent it, we received it. Want to do 3? 3 messages sent, and there they are. 1, 2, 3. How about 10? And you could see it receiving those 10 messages. So there is your basic message processor. And it's just sitting here. And now if I go back here and hit enter, it tells us it's no longer waiting for messages. Enter again, and our program exits. Okay, so that is the fundamental technique. Now, as promised, I want to spend a little time looking at Service Bus processor options. So what do we have? So I can use the IntelliSense. So the first thing I want to point out is receive mode. So our receive mode for this processor can be set to Service Bus receive mode peak lock or receive and delete. Now, this video tutorial, they're carefully numbered and they go in order. And so maybe you've been watching them in order, but maybe you're like me and you're a little jumpy and impatient and you just went right to this video and you're like, what is that? Well, what I'd like you to do, if that's the situation you're in, is go back and take a look at the 4th video. I'm looking over there here to see which one it is. So in the 4th video, I go over exactly what these 2 receive modes do. So your receiver can be set to either receive and delete or peak lock. Now, if you are using the peak lock method, then you get to do this thing, which is autocomplete messages. So if we say autocomplete messages equals true, which I believe is the default, then right here at the end of this message handler, as soon as it's done, it's going to call receiver.completeMessage async. And again, if you're not sure what that means, then I would like you to go back and look at the 5th video where we kind of dig into this whole peak lock thing and message timeouts and how you can complete them. Now, if it takes too long and it times out, or if there's an exception, it's I think it just lets the message time out. It doesn't dead letter it. I don't think it calls abandon, but in any case, it doesn't really matter because it's going to pop back into the queue just like you learned in video number 5. There's another setting here to take a look at, which is the prefetch count. And I actually want to demonstrate this one in just a second. So prefetch count makes your Service Bus processor behave like a receiver where you've called receive messages and you've set a max message count. So again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and look at video number 7, where I talk about using the receiver to receive multiple messages. So we're going to do that in just a second here, but you may be kind of getting the theme, which is the Service Bus processor kind of has all the same features as the Service Bus receiver. And in fact, one of the cool things you can do in .NET, if I right click on this and I say go to definition, it's going to decompile the Microsoft source code and we can actually see what they say. And you can see right here that the Service Bus processor provides an abstraction around a set of Azure messaging Service Bus receivers. So it really is a wrapper around one or more receivers. All of the code examples out there kind of start you off with the processor, which is nice because in some ways it's easier to use. However, now that you understand, or will once you watch the videos, understand the receiver, you are in a much better position to configure your processor so that it behaves the way you want to. So now let's just look at one of these options and kind of see how the processor is going to behave. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to say autocomplete messages is true and Service Bus receive mode, we don't have to, peak lock is the default, so we don't need to set that. But let's set prefetch count equal to 10. All right, we're going to pull 10 messages at a time. And now in our message processor, let's write that out, and then let's do thread.sleep 1000. So each message is going to take 1 second to complete. And last, I'm going to take us back to our queue, and I am going to configure the message lock duration to be only 5 seconds. That's the minimum. And we're going to say, okay. So now we'll go back to the queue here. It's got nothing in it. And let me get everything staged. Again, we're going to prefetch 10, but it's going to take 1 second to do each of them. So let's see what happens. I'm wondering if you can kind of imagine the little train wreck that we're going to create here. So it's waiting for messages, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put 10 messages in the queue. You ready? So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, and bam, we're hitting those lock errors because it's attempting to auto-complete them and they are expiring. And now it's gone to message 7, message 8, message 9, message 10, message 8, message 6. What's it doing? Message 7, message 9, message 10. And then it actually stopped. It got through them. So going back to my, my queue, I have my delivery count set to 3. So it is going to retry these a couple of times. And what's happening is it's failing on the first one, putting it back in the queue, but then the receiver is picking up another batch. In this case, it did 5, and then it'll grab another 5, and it might have to do one final one, depending. So it was able to do this in 5 batches, or 2 batches, or 3 batches, and it got through it. So this is just to illustrate that all those things you've learned about Service Bus Receiver are going to come in handy when dealing with Service Bus Processor. We're going on a little long, but there's one last thing that I really want to show you, and that's exceptions. So let us take out the sleep here, and let us take out the returning of the completed task, and let's just throw an unhandled exception. And we'll say something really bad happened. So sorry. All right, and we can kick this off. So our receiver is now waiting for messages. I'm going to bring back my message sender, and I'm just going to send a single message, and let's watch what happens. All right. And I'm just going to click through all the exceptions until it finishes. So it was waiting for messages. It got message 1, and then our exception handler event happened, and it logged out the message. So why did we get this 3 times? Again, you remember I showed you that my max delivery count is set to 3. So when there's an unhandled exception, that also essentially aborts the message and puts it back in the queue, but only 3 times because that's how I have it configured. All right, there you go. That is the Service Bus Processor. Now, hopefully you can understand all the help files that are out there.